Talkin Money.
Well, alrighty then. We're back to Talkin Money with Jeff Tarbell.
All right, good morning. Welcome to the second hour of Talkin Money. It's Saturday. I want to make sure, Troy, you did give out your phone number there. I want to make sure you give out the right phone number for people that want to talk about ADA compliance with you. Could you give out that number one more time?
Yes, 916-742-1934.
Perfect.
I believe I said 35 earlier.
That's all right. That's all right. Hey, before the break, we did give a quiz question, actually, at the last break. Brad, what do we have there as our question?
You know, I know it's not me, but there was a winner, and his name was Brad.
Got it.
So, but anyways, the police in Zurich confiscated $6 trillion in counterfeit U.S. bonds, a figure equal to nearly half of the U.S. debt. Which is amazing.
So there was a bust where about $6 trillion worth of bonds, counterfeit bonds, were about to go out into circulation.
Right. What's interesting about that, too, is that a lot of the bonds were so counterfeit that they were like a $3 bill, that they were issued in increments that weren't even real increments that a U.S. bond would be issued in.
Okay. Stupid crooks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dumb crooks.
Well, hey, in the studio again, filling in for Jeff. He is celebrating his 20th wedding anniversary with his wife, Kim, up in North Star, Lake Tahoe. My name is Nick Perjanik, and in the studio today, I have a gentleman that I met just last week before the show. His name is Brad DeHaven, and this is one of those shows that it's not a marketing ploy here, but you need to listen to the entire show if you can. I'm sitting next to a financial advisor. Guy looks like me, a little bit of gray in the beard, and healthy 50-year-old.
Yeah, I'm 53.
Close enough.
I know I look younger.
Okay, I'm 47. But, Brad, you're a financial advisor here in the Sacramento area.
Right.
The book goes through this whole history of your life and how you became one of those parents that we all fear we have to become, or I should say dealing with a topic that we all fear we have to deal with. So help our listeners understand how a financial advisor even got involved in the OxyContin world.
Well, in the prescription drug world, would I probably be more accurate? It was not a planned event. In fact, if anything, I think the reason that the book came out, I never really intended on writing a book. These were the things that went thump in the night after I did what I did. And I wrote Defining Moments, a suburban father's journey into his son's OxyContin addiction, or oxy addiction is how it's titled. And it really is, Defining Moments is a story about my life and what defined me and what made me the father that I would become. And I really wanted to be the father that I never had. And I think that's pretty evident in the book. You read it last week. So I think we all try to be better than, give our children a better life. And I think that unfortunately in this world, it's just not enough. You know, I have two children, and I grew up surrounded by addicts. And I would say if I had to summarize Defining Moments, besides it being what defined me in my life, it's really that addiction defined me, and how I let addiction define me, and how I came out of that thinking that I knew everything about addiction and that addiction would never happen under my eyes.
Right.
And
before the break, or before we came back on the air, I said to you, the book that you wrote, again, it's called Defining Moments, a suburban father's journey into his son's oxy addiction. And you can find it on Amazon. So for those of you on the internet, if you want to look it up, there's 30-something reviews, all positive reviews right now.
Right. We have 31 reviews, which is really rewarding to read how it affected people. We have 29 5 stars and 2 4 stars. And remember, if you do read the book and review it, the 5th star does not cost any extra. So
all right.
You can also find it on my website, which I founded a website in conjunction with the release of this book, rxdrugaddict.com. And the nice thing about buying it through there is it'll give you the option to buy it through Amazon or buy it direct. If you buy it direct, you can there's a drop-down menu of charities that you can donate a portion of the proceeds from the sale of the book to those charities, and those charities are associated with dealing with young addicts and addiction, and you can pick that charity. And if you're a charity that's listening and you want to be on that list, you can contact me through rxdrugaddict.com, and we'll put you on the drop-down menu.
All right. So I made the comment earlier that I think really the book, and I want to go through some of this with you and some of those defining moments, it really appeals, I think, to two different crowds. One, to those individuals that have children, mothers, brothers, grandparents, anybody addicted to a prescription drug, you're going to be able to relate to this book. But the second part is Troy has an 8-year-old. I have a 13 and 15-year-old. And, we're parents that little bit oblivious to what's going on out there. I mean, maybe in high schools it's marijuana or ecstasy or something, and we're kind of dealing with that issue at that age. But as a parent, you need to be aware of what teens are doing. What are the signs? What is really going on out there? And I'll tell you what, reading this book really did that for me. So,
well, good. I'm glad to hear that.
I want to start off. I got to read this line from, let's see, Fatherhood 101, page 45. I don't like to read on the air, but here I'm going to quote you here. I have a theory about teenagers. Basically, they could be walking off a cliff towards a canyon, and you could yell and scream warnings all you want, but your time would be better spent packing them a lunch so they could eat it on the way down. I just think that it every 14, 15, 16-year-old kid knows everything out there. So help us understand how a financial advisor is sitting in a parking lot with a microphone, right?
Right.
With 20 some odd police officers, sheriffs sitting around waiting for a drug bust to go down. How did you end up sitting in your truck?
Well, I asked myself a lot in that in the book, and really that's what defining moments became. Is that when you sit in a parking lot for hours on time or hours at a time, and you are surrounded by undercover narcotics officers that you cannot see, and you've got a wire running up your back, and there's been a lot of preliminary work to get this to happen. And the reason I did it is because, well, there's a lot of reasons I did it, but I would say one of the most defining moments in my life is that when I grew up, my brother went to prison for dealing cocaine. And when you walk into, we had to fly to Texas from here to visit my brother, and my mother was a single mother, and walking into a prison and visiting your brother and watching them, take your mom off to search her and taking you off to search you is one of the very many defining moments in my life. That when my son got I have two sons, and I call them my bottle rockets, and the reason I do is because I lit them, I carried them the same. My wife and I have been married for it'll be 28 years this May. And one son played 4 years of high school golf and went on to 5 years of college and a degree in business and accounting. And the other one became a drug addict, which started with a simple prescription for Vicodin for a broken arm when he fell off a trampoline. So my advice to parents and my speeches, that I do at schools and high schools, and I talk to parents almost every single day from all over the United States, is really quite different than my book. My book has this kind of subliminal message as to where addiction can go and what addiction can do to you, and that it can happen to anybody, no matter how prepared you think you are, which I really thought I was. But in the end, I ended up in a parking lot doing this drug bust in an effort to get my son out of prison or out of a prison stint and into rehab, which I knew he so desperately needed. At the time of his low, he was 6'2" and under 130 pounds.
Wow. So kind of go back to the beginning then. So your son hurt his arm.
Right.
Had a basic prescription.
Right.
For Vicodin. Other drugs? I mean, was there any signs? What were you looking for? Were you looking for?
Well, I get asked that a lot. What are the signs? And there are the signs, unfortunately, for drug abuse and drug addiction are very similar to the signs that you could quickly dismiss as a parent, as that this is my child morphing into an adult. Suddenly they don't want to be around me. Suddenly I'm not cool. Suddenly they're with their friends all the time. They blow in, they blow out. You can quickly dismiss these, and when I look back at them and in their entirety, I see the difference between my two sons. I see so many of the signs so clearly now, and so many parents I know that are out there that are listening to this that are afflicted by addiction can relate to this. That when you look back, you've seen all the signs. They've shown them to you, but you dismiss them because as a parent, it's very easy. You've spent your whole life raising this child and picking them up and dusting the gravel off their knees and saying that's going to be okay and it's not as bad as it looks, and protecting them, while we as parents can be very judgmental against it's that other kid, or my kid will never be that kid, or my kid will never use drugs like that kid. And it's easy for us to judge someone else, but it's very difficult for us to look our kids directly in the eye and really look at those signs and symptoms and call it what it is and test them. And, I would say this: if you think that your child is showing signs of any disease, if your son came home or your daughter came home and had a growth on the side of their neck, you wouldn't take them in the back bedroom and cut out the growth and start treating it. But so many parents, like myself, make the mistake of thinking that they can treat addiction at home and that they can just make this go away. And by taking these drugs away from this kid for long enough, that his body will stop wanting them. But addiction is so much deeper than that, and professional help is really where it needs to end up.
Right. I think in the book, too, one of the things that you talk about that I find very interesting is that relationship between what you did as a youth and what kids do as a youth. And that thought of, well, there's always that thought, hey, my parents did it, so it's okay. But your background and some experimentation on your part,
right?
How did that? There's a lot of parents out there that in the 70s and 60s, 70s, 80s tried drugs and they're fine,
right? Well,
so how did you relate to that? How did that affect how you were parenting?
Well, I thought it made me more aware. I thought it made me more in tune with what was going on. I didn't think addiction would happen under my nose, not on my watch, not with all that I knew and all that I'd been through. But the fact is, just like, and I did experiment, just like if I sat next to my mother at the dinner table and I was giggling and she'd say, "What's so funny?" I'd think, boy, is she stupid. She doesn't know that I'm stoned. Well, now we don't know what the symptoms are of these drugs. They're getting them out of our medicine cabinet because we're not locking them up. They're getting them out of Grandpa's medicine cabinet or the house they're babysitting or the house across the street or wherever they're at. And people need to be locking up these meds because when I grew up, we wouldn't have looked in our parents' medicine cabinet to get high. And I mean, we would have, found it on the street somewhere. But now that's exactly where they look because powerful medications that are opiates, like Vicodin, leading to Norco, leading to OxyContin, and these are pills that are just commonly just sitting around that are worth thousands of dollars on the street. I mean, one OxyContin pill has a street value of about $100 right now, one 80 milligram OxyContin pill, where somebody might pick it up for a $10 copay and pick up 40 or 50 of them, and here they are on the street being sold because they're synthetic heroin.
Right.
So,
in the book, you really do talk about that because prior to read your book, if someone told me that they were using OxyContin, I would have thought, hey, they're taking someone's pills and
right.
taking a pill so they don't feel as much pain. But you went through and kind of explained how does somebody go from taking a pill to lighting it on aluminum foil?
Yeah,
I mean that is where it goes.
Exactly. It's these kids are very savvy. It's interesting as poorly as my son was doing in school because of his addiction. I will say that he was becoming a chemist of his own, and a lot of these addicts do that. They know how to extract the opiates from a Vicodin or a Norco, or to that they have to remove the coating off of an OxyContin before they smoke it, and they slide it around on a piece of aluminum foil and inhale the fumes to get much higher. Because just like any addiction, if it's alcohol, for instance, maybe 2 drinks was fine at one point, but now you've got to see the bottom of the bottle before you're done. And opiates or any prescription drug addiction is really much the same way. They need more and more, stronger and stronger, and then they start to alter the way in which they consume it so that it gives them a higher high to satisfy that demon that now owns them. And addiction, one of the things in my new book that I'm really going to is I'm really looking for parents like you guys that to hopefully help educate you on the things to look for. And it's interesting that we as parents go and childproof our home when we bring home the baby from the hospital and he starts crawling around, but yet we leave these prescriptions sitting in cupboards all over the place, or we let our kids in homes where there's alcohol available or other parents are feeding them alcohol or whatever the case may be. There's an interesting statistic that just came out last week, and I'm reading from it. It was out of actually a journal back east. But there were enough narcotic painkillers prescribed last year to dispense to every adult in the United States around the clock for a month. So the amount of prescription drugs that are being dispensed doctors are throwing pills at everything. And one of my advice to you guys as parents would be, I wish I would have questioned my doctor more when Vicodin was prescribed for his broken arm, that he would have toughed it out a little bit more, maybe on Motrin or something that was non-addictive, because I did have addiction in my past. I did have a brother that was an addict, a father that was an alcoholic, and so on and so forth. So we need to take responsibility as parents, start asking questions, and look for alternatives.
Thanks, Brad. Hey, we do have to take a break. In the studio today, I do have Brad DeHaven. He is the author of Defining Moments, A Suburban Father's Journey into His Son's Oxy Addiction. And Brad, there's some parts of the book I just really want to talk about and share with the listeners out there. If you fall into one of those two groups of somebody that has a prescription drug problem, or you're a parent that has children that may be approaching that teenage years. We'd love to hear from you. Give us a call at 339-1140 or 1-800-920-1140. And
you
Troy
can
Milburn,
be anonymous too.
Anonymous.
Yeah, absolutely anonymous.
Everybody
Make
who
up
calls,
a name.
Everybody who you call, be Bob today.
Yeah.
So it'll be the Bob and Bob show here. But give us a call, and love to hear your stories. Love to hear your input.